Welcome back to another Fantasy EFL GAMEWEEK preview video, where I take you through everything you need to know before picking your teams for Game Week 6. The international break is over, so the championship is back, and we'll have a full week of fixtures to go through, so let's get straight into it. Okay, so we'll start off with a review of Game Week 5, and there was only 13 games overall, so this shouldn't take too long. I'll start off with the three from League 1. We had Barnsley beating Bristol Rovers 2-1 at home, with a debut goal from Keeler Dunn, and Bryant Belongo getting yet another assist for Bristol Rovers. Even though they did lose the game, I'm still very impressed with Bristol Rovers so far. They put up an XG of 1.67 away at Barnsley, to Barnsley's 1.68, so it was very close in terms of data. Barnsley just had more shots on target, and so were a little bit more clinical with the opportunities they had. Charlton drew 1-1 at home to Rotherham. Maybe Rotherham is starting to come into a little bit of form now. A fairly even game overall, and 1-1 was probably a fair result, to be honest. Finally, we had Wrexham in their derby game against Shrewsbury, and absolutely smashed them 3-0. This was the game I watched the most of on Saturday afternoon, and I have to say, it was basically complete dominance. Very impressed with Wrexham, and they're now sat top of the table with a +9 goal difference already, with only 2 goals conceded. In League 2, there were 6 red cards from just the 10 games. You dirty bastards down in League 2. Newport went down to 9 men and lost 4-1 at home to Port Vale. A McGoldrick brace gave Notts County a 2-0 win over Accrington, moving them into the top 2 and leaving Accrington in the bottom 2. Doncaster beat Gillingham 1-0 with a goal from Billy Sharp. I think these two are the 2 strongest teams in the division in my opinion, so it's interesting to see that Doncaster were fairly dominant in that game. They didn't really give Gillingham much of a look in. I know it was only 1-0, but it's looking good for Donny. A brace from Cook gave Bradford a 2-1 win over Carlisle. And then, to be honest, I have no idea what happened in the Barrow game. I still need to watch the end back. Barrow went 1-0 up before their keeper got sent off. An outfield player then had to go in net for them, as they didn't have a goalkeeper on the bench. In the second half, Swindon then also got a man sent off, so both teams were down to 10 men. And if you do watch my team selection videos as well, you'll know that I had a Barrow defender in my team. And the Fantasy EFL app and all the score apps that I check the scores on and stuff like that, they all seem to suggest that the game had finished 1-0 to Barrow, and that my player had received clean sheet points and everything. Only for it to turn out that Barrow conceded a 98th minute equaliser that was changed later on all the apps. It's a strange one, but that's what happened, and the game finished 1-1. Okay, so let's move on and have a look at some teams to target for Game Week 6 of Fantasy EFL. First up and top of my list is Doncaster. Game Week 6 seems to be another week where a lot of teams that I like are away fixtures. I'll leave that up to you on if you want to take the risk on that, but I'll give you all the information you need to make an informed decision on it. Doncaster play away at Harrogate in Game Week 6. They have a projected goals of 1.47, a clean sheet percentage of 38.5, and a win percentage of 54.1. Doncaster now sit top of League 2 with 4 wins from 5, and have still been good away from home, so the away fixture isn't really a worry for me. Harrogate have only won 1 game from 5 and sit 20th already in the table. They've lost their last 2 games 1-0 to both Barrow and Cheltenham, and I think Doncaster will be too strong for them too. Next up's Middlesbrough, who play at home to Preston. They have a projected goals of 1.76, a clean sheet percentage of 46.5, and a win percentage of 66.7. They play a Preston side with just 1 win from 4, and lost 3-1 away at Oxford in Game Week 4. With Borough being the home team, I think they'll be much too strong for them in this game. Middlesbrough are sat just outside the playoffs at the minute, and beat Cardiff 2-0 away from home in their last game. A strong team selection for me this week, and the stats agree. I also like Sunderland this week. A little bit less than the 2 I've already mentioned, as Sunderland are away at Plymouth. And although I think Plymouth are probably the weakest side in the Championship this season, they are always a lot better at home than away. So I never feel 100% confident going against them. The data still looks good for Sunderland though. They have a projected goals of 1.47, a clean sheet percentage of 36.4, and a win percentage of 54.1. Sunderland are currently sat top of the Championship with 4 wins from 4, and only conceding 1 goal so far. Plymouth have only managed 2 draws and sit in the bottom 3 already after losing 1-0 at home to Stoke in Game Week 4. Rotherham are another team I like this week, and another home game for you here. They have a projected goals of 1.45, a clean sheet percentage of 43.5, and a win percentage of 60%. They play at home to Burton Albion. I think Rotherham are starting to come into some better form now after a bad start to the season. I think another home game could keep that momentum going, and they play against the Burton side that haven't won a game yet this season and haven't even scored a goal in the last 2 league games. Stockport are the final team I'll go through in depth, and then the rest I've put in an order of personal preference along with all the data, so feel free to pause the video and have a look through and see if there's any other teams that you like to target this week. Stockport go away to Crawley in Game Week 6. They have a projected goals of 1.45, a clean sheet percentage of 36.4, and a win percentage of 51.3. They're still unbeaten in the league with 3 wins from 4, and a goal difference of +7. And Crawley have been inconsistent with 2 wins and 2 losses. They lost 3-0 at home to Barnsley in Game Week 4, so aren't necessarily better at home, and so I think Stockport can take advantage of that and should be able to continue their great start to League One. Okay, that's all the teams. Like I said, all the others are in order on the screen, so have a look if you like, and I'll now move on to looking at some specific players to target for Game Week 6. Okay, so let's have a look at some players to target for Game Week 6. With a lot of the teams I like this week being away fixtures, a lot of the players that I like need to be, I guess, a little bit safer, and so for that reason, some of them are a little bit more highly owned than I would normally go for in this section. That's not necessarily a bad thing, and for a week like this, it might actually be better to have some players that a lot more people own. I've still tried to add in a few differentials too, so hopefully it's useful for you. First up is Eilizer Mayenda of Sunderland. This is one of the more differential players I like this week. He's only at 1.2% ownership, and has got 28 points so far this season. And don't forget the Championship are a week behind, so that's good going for an attacker. He's getting an average of 7 points per game, and seems to be Sunderland's main target man with 2 goals and 2 assists so far this season. Sunderland have scored 10 goals in 4 games and only conceded 1, which bodes well for Game Week 6 as they play a Plymouth side who haven't won in the league yet this season. Plymouth have only scored 2 goals and conceded 7, and lost their most recent game 1-0 at home to Stoke, so it all points towards goals for Sunderland, and I'm hoping Mayenda gets involved. Next up is Louie Barry of Stockport, who's scored 3 goals for them so far this season, with 26 points so far in Fantasy EFL. Kyle Wootton with his 3 goals and 2 assists is also a good option, but I think it's quite a close call between them this week, and for me I just prefer Barry. Louie Barry's only owned by 2.6% of players, so it's still fairly low and it's definitely still classed as differential. Stockport are still unbeaten in the league so far and play against Crawley, who started the season well, but have already lost their form and lost 3-0 at home to Barnsley in their most recent game. I'm expecting them to continue performing at a low level, and I think Stockport will be too strong for them. Another player I like from Stockport is Oliver Norwood. I did mention him when he first joined Stockport, but I did also say that maybe we need to give him a bit more time to settle before we start selecting him. Well, now that he's played a couple of games and he's been through the first international break, this could potentially be the first good week to start selecting him. And a thing that we take from FPL is that you always want to be ahead choosing players that will score, especially in that certain week that you have them, obviously. So you don't want to be chasing players just because they scored big last week. So you may look at Norwood and think, well, he's only got 9 points so far. But yeah, but if you select him in a week where he scores big, well then everyone else will start looking at him and he'll have more points. So he's still at 0.0% selected, which means he couldn't be more of a differential. The only issue is that it's an away fixture, and if you have one of, let's say, Louie Barry or Wootton already, I don't know that you'd want to double up on their attack, but he's definitely someone to think about. Next up is someone that you'll all know by now, but I have to mention him even though I nearly mention him every week, but that's Luke Molyneux. And I'll talk a bit in a second about a captain trick I'm thinking about using with him this week. But let's just talk about him a bit first. He's got a massive 48 points so far this season, with 4 goals and 2 assists. He plays away at Harrogate, but we've seen already from him that an away fixture means nothing, and he's owned by 21.1% of players. So he is the type of player that in a week like this, you really want him in even for a bit of cover. He's averaging 9.6 points per game, and Harrogate have only won 1 game so far and conceded 7 goals. Doncaster have won 4 out of 5 and scored 10 goals, so it's all pointing to a Doncaster win on Thursday night, and Molyneux is usually involved in their goals. Lastly is Luke Ayling of Middlesbrough. With Borough's clean sheet percentage being at 46.5 and their win percentage of 66.7, I couldn't really not look at their defence at least. And for me, Luke Ayling seems the most attacking too, so combining that clean sheet potential with the added potential of an attacking return, I think he could be a really good pick this week. He is at 9.1% selected at the time of recording, so he's another one that he's definitely not a differential, but that doesn't matter as long as he gets the points that we want. He's averaging 6.5 points per game, and Borough play at home to Preston, who have won 1 game from 4 so far. They've also conceded 8 goals and only scored 2. Middlesbrough have won 2, drawn 1 and lost 1, and they are definitely a team I want to target for Game Week 6. For me, Luke Ayling is just the best option. Okay, and then finally, just before I end the video, I just want to go through the cheeky captaincy trick that I've been talking about. I'll go through this a little bit more in my team selection video later this week as well, as I do think I might actually be using this trick this week, but I thought it might be useful just to go through it in this video too. So if you don't know what it is, hopefully this will explain it a little bit. So as Harrogate versus Doncaster has been played on Thursday night, and I'm likely to have Luke Molyneux in my team, I can vice-captain him and then leave my captaincy on any of the other players who play on Saturday. If Molyneux doesn't do well, or only gets, let's say, 5 points, then I can just leave it and captain a different player on Saturday. But if he does do well, and let's say, let's say he gets 10 to 15 points, what I could do is I could transfer in a goalkeeper that was definitely not going to play. I could captain that goalkeeper, and then when that player doesn't play, the captaincy will be transferred over to Molyneux, and I'll get double the points for him. So obviously then you're playing with 6 players, but it just gives you a bit of cover on the captaincy. Hopefully that makes sense, and like I said, I'm likely to use it this week, so watch out for my team selection video later this week to see the rest of my team. So there we are, that's everything you need to know before choosing your teams for Game Week 6. If you do have any questions that I haven't answered in this video, please drop them in the comments and I'll answer all of them. If you did enjoy the video, please like and subscribe, it really does help me out, and I appreciate all the support you've shown so far. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.